The Galactic Concord had catalogued millions of phenomena across the known universe. Gravity storms that bent light into spirals, living nebulae that sang electromagnetic lullabies, even crystalline organisms that communicated through shifting colors. Yet nothing in their endless records prepared them for humanity's music. Humans had entered the galactic stage quietly. Their technology was respectable but not revolutionary. Their ships were efficient but not elegant. Their diplomacy was polite but cautious. Most species categorized humanity as moderately promising, emotionally volatile, physically fragile. They were wrong. The discovery happened by accident. On the research station Eidolon 7, orbiting a dim blue star, a team of multi-species scientists studied cultural artifacts gathered from newly contacted civilizations. The Concord believed understanding art allowed prediction of social behavior. Patterns in creative expression often revealed how a species handled conflict, cooperation, and survival. Human music had been classified as harmless entertainment. Until track 27. The file was ancient, originating from Earth nearly 800 years before humanity developed faster-than-light travel. The metadata described it simply as a battle hymn. The lead researcher, a Vol scientist named Turin Kai, initiated playback as part of routine analysis. The first sound was soft, distant horns layered beneath a slow, steady drumbeat. Within seconds, the station's emotional monitoring systems began reporting irregularities. Heart rates increased across 3 species. Skin conductivity rose. A normally timid Lethari linguist reported an unfamiliar sensation described as anticipatory courage. As the music intensified, something extraordinary happened. The crew began synchronizing their movements. Subtle at first. A tapping limb. A shift in breathing patterns. Eye movements aligning with rhythmic intervals. Then the crescendo struck. The deep percussion surged like thunder rolling across a battlefield long forgotten by time. The harmonic layers carried tension, loss, and something deeper, determination forged through suffering. Turin Kai felt something impossible. Resolve. Not logical motivation derived from data. Not calculated survival instinct. Resolve born from emotion. By the time the track ended, the crew sat in stunned silence. One researcher finally spoke. "I feel prepared." Prepared for what? No one knew. The Concord launched an immediate investigation. Across controlled trials, similar results appeared. Human compositions triggered powerful neurological responses in nearly every known species. Unlike other artistic expressions, human music contained dynamic emotional architecture, carefully layered progressions that simulated struggle, uncertainty, triumph, grief, unity. Alien species who evolved without large-scale warfare had never developed cultural frameworks for collective resilience under extreme stress. Humans had. Their history had demanded it. Ancient Earth had endured centuries of conflict, hardship, and survival challenges that forced their ancestors to transform suffering into sound. Music became memory. Music became training. Music became psychological armor. One classified experiment ended in alarm when a peaceful diplomatic crew, exposed to human orchestral compositions, volunteered for a high-risk rescue simulation normally rejected by 97% of participants. Their reasoning was simple. If others can be saved, risk becomes acceptable. The Concord's High Council convened in emergency session. Many feared unintended consequences. If human music could inspire unity, it could also inspire rebellion. If it could strengthen morale, it could encourage resistance. If widely distributed, emotional influence could destabilize centuries of carefully maintained galactic equilibrium. The vote passed with rare unanimity. Human music was declared a Class 7 cognitive catalyst. Restricted, regulated, silenced. Across thousands of systems, archives containing human compositions were sealed behind quantum encryption barriers. Streaming networks removed harmonic structures derived from human rhythmic mathematics. Public performance of human musical scales was prohibited. Human diplomats protested politely, then complied. They did not argue. They did not resist. They did not attempt to smuggle cultural data across Concord monitoring networks. They simply became quiet. Centuries passed. Generations across the galaxy grew without ever hearing the sound of human rhythm. Humanity adapted, as they always had. They composed in private. They archived in hidden vaults. They remembered. Then something appeared beyond the mapped edge of Concord space. No signals. No art. No emotion. Only perfectly synchronized movement patterns approaching inhabited systems with silent precision. The first contact report contained only one unusual observation. The unknown vessels emitted no detectable frequency patterns of any kind. No rhythm. No harmony. Only silence. The first world fell in less than 6 hours. Concord surveillance arrays detected the intrusion long before visual confirmation. At the edge of the Valoran trade cluster, deep space sensors recorded gravitational distortions moving in mathematically perfect formation. No signal emissions. No thermal fluctuations beyond minimal propulsion signatures. The unknown vessels did not behave like any species encountered before. They did not scout. They did not communicate. They did not hesitate. They arrived already knowing. The Valoran Defense Fleet mobilized immediately, deploying standard layered deterrence protocols, warning transmissions, trajectory barriers, defensive formations calibrated to discourage escalation. No response came. The unknown ships adjusted formation with flawless timing, slipping through defensive gaps as though predicting every maneuver seconds before it occurred. Within moments, Valoran command networks experienced something unprecedented. Their predictive combat algorithms failed. The invaders did not react emotionally. They did not prioritize survival. They did not attempt intimidation. They simply executed solutions. Every defensive strategy relied, in some measure, on anticipating hesitation, fear, caution, uncertainty. Yet the approaching vessels displayed none of these traits. Their movements resembled equations solving themselves. Perfectly optimized. Perfectly silent. The first defensive line collapsed when the invaders deployed synchronized gravitational shear pulses, tearing apart cruiser hulls without explosive signatures. Ships simply separated along structural stress points as if persuaded to come undone. Valoran casualties mounted rapidly. Distress signals echoed across the Concord's communication lattice. Emergency assemblies convened within minutes. Within hours, similar attacks struck 3 additional systems along converging vectors. The invaders demonstrated adaptive intelligence beyond known machine learning constructs. Defensive countermeasures that succeeded briefly were immediately neutralized in subsequent engagements. They learned faster than the Concorde could respond. Worse still, they coordinated across vast distances without detectable communication channels. No signal lag. No command relay patterns. Only perfect synchronization. The Concorde designated the Threat Virex Collective, a placeholder classification derived from fragmented sensor telemetry. No biological signatures detected. No linguistic structure identified. No artistic expression observed. They were not merely silent. They were absence itself. Military analysts began reviewing archived data, searching for precedent. Hidden within restricted cultural archives, one anomaly appeared repeatedly in historical assessments of human behavior. Humanity displayed unusually high persistence under conditions statistically associated with surrender in other species. Historical human records describe soldiers continuing defensive actions despite overwhelming odds, motivated by abstract constructs such as duty, honor, memory, or shared identity. These motivational factors lacked direct survival value. They were inefficient, illogical, yet effective. Several analysts noted correlation patterns between these behaviors and the previously banned human phenomenon classified as music. The connection was initially dismissed as irrelevant cultural speculation. Logic should prevail in strategic conflict. Emotion introduced unpredictability. Unpredictability introduced instability. The Concorde preferred stability. Then the Thren collective fleet engaged the Virex at the binary star system Kelt. The Thren were considered one of the most disciplined military species in the Concorde. Their neural pathways evolved for calm decision-making under pressure. Their fleets moved with deliberate precision refined across centuries of peacekeeping operations. The battle lasted 9 minutes. Thren formations executed flawless opening maneuvers. The Virex adjusted. Thren commanders shifted tactics. The Virex adapted faster. Within minutes, Thren vessels began withdrawing according to preservation protocols. Loss projections exceeded acceptable thresholds. Survival probability favored retreat. Retreat was logical. Retreat preserved future capacity. Retreat was correct. Yet something unexpected appeared in the after-action reports. Thren pilots described an unfamiliar hesitation during withdrawal calculations, a sensation described as absence of internal reinforcement. They had followed logic perfectly, yet morale metrics indicated degradation. Without emotional incentive structures, persistence declined rapidly when success probability dropped below optimal parameters. They had not lacked intelligence. They had lacked something else, something humans possessed in abundance. As system after system fell to the silent advance, restricted archives began receiving unprecedented access requests. Human cultural records. Specifically, files flagged under the prohibited classification. Acoustic emotional resonance patterns. The Council resisted. Fear remained. What if human music destabilized command hierarchy? What if emotional amplification created reckless behavior? What if unity inspired defiance? Human diplomatic representatives submitted a formal proposal consisting of only 12 words. We understand persistence beyond probability. Allow us to assist. The Council delayed response. Then the Virex captured the strategic relay hub at Aurealis Prime without firing a single projectile. Entire defense grids simply failed to coordinate effectively under adaptive pressure. Perfect logic could not compensate for declining morale across multi-species fleets. For the first time in recorded Concorde history, a phrase appeared in official military assessment documentation. Motivational deficiency identified as critical vulnerability. The galaxy had optimized strategy, optimized technology, optimized cooperation. But they had optimized away the very thing that allowed humans to endure impossible odds. Emotion. And far beyond the defensive perimeter, Virex vessels continued advancing in flawless, silent rhythmlessness, approaching the densely populated core systems where trillions lived under the assumption that logic alone guaranteed survival. They were about to learn otherwise. The emergency session of the Galactic Concorde lasted 32 continuous hours. Delegates from over 400 species transmitted arguments, counterarguments, and statistical models projecting potential outcomes of lifting the ban on human music. Probability matrices covered every conceivable risk: emotional instability, breakdown of chain-of-command structures, unpredictable behavioral shifts across diverse neurological architectures. Fear remained the dominant variable. Yet the Virex collective continued advancing. 3 additional systems fell during the deliberation period alone. Each loss followed the same pattern: flawless defensive preparation undone by gradual collapse in coordination under sustained pressure. Commanders reported crews performing with technical precision, yet disengaging once predictive models indicated unfavorable odds. Efficiency preserved resources. Efficiency preserved lives. Efficiency also surrendered territory. Human representatives did not interrupt the debate. They simply transmitted a single scientific dataset compiled across centuries of private research. The document carried the title, Cross-Species Neural Synchronization Through Structured Harmonic Progression. It contained no emotional language, only evidence. Human neuroscientists had continued studying music even after the ban, focusing on measurable physiological responses across volunteer participants from multiple species prior to restriction enforcement. The findings were difficult to ignore. Rhythmic auditory patterns triggered micro-adjustments in neural firing intervals, gradually aligning cognitive processing speeds between individuals exposed to identical harmonic structures. In simpler terms, music synchronized minds. Shared tempo increased reaction timing accuracy. Layered harmonics improved pattern recognition speed. Predictable rhythmic structures reduced stress response interference during high-pressure decision cycles. Emotion was not replacing logic. Emotion was reinforcing it. One particular experimental result captured the Council's attention. Participants exposed to structured orchestral compositions demonstrated increased willingness to attempt solutions categorized as high-risk, high-benefit, particularly when outcomes affected group survival rather than individual preservation. Logic defined possibility. Emotion enabled persistence. The ban had removed the second component. Humanity proposed a controlled demonstration. No lyrical content. No culturally specific symbolism. Only instrumental harmonic architecture designed to test synchronization effects under simulated combat coordination conditions. After extended deliberation, the Council authorized a restricted trial at research platform Helios 9, positioned safely beyond active conflict zones. The participating fleet consisted of vessels from 9 species, each selected for neurological diversity. Volunteers received full disclosure regarding potential emotional influence exposure. Medical monitoring systems were calibrated to detect anomalies. The test composition lasted 6 minutes. It began with a simple tonal progression, a repeating harmonic structure built around mathematically balanced frequency relationships easily processed by varied sensory systems. No dramatic crescendos. No aggressive, percussive elements. Just pattern, consistency, predictability. Within moments, biofeedback systems registered subtle changes. Respiration stabilized across species with vastly different metabolic rhythms. Cognitive processing latency decreased by measurable margins. Pilots navigating complex, simulated asteroid fields began adjusting course corrections in tighter synchronization intervals. Communication clarity improved despite language differences. Observers noted something unexpected. Participants appeared calmer, not more aggressive, not reckless, focused. Then the second track began. This composition introduced soft percussive pulses beneath the harmonic layer. A steady beat. Measured. Unwavering. The effect intensified. Fleet maneuver simulations demonstrated a 12% improvement in coordinated response time. Tactical prediction accuracy increased. Error rates decreased. No signs of destabilizing emotional spikes appeared. Instead, participants described experiencing something unfamiliar yet compelling. Confidence not based on certainty of success, but on willingness to attempt. When the final note faded, silence filled the observation chamber. Then one of the Thren commanders spoke quietly. "I understand now why humans persist." The Council requested a final test. Human researchers hesitated before submitting the last composition file. Its classification carried historical significance dating back to pre-spaceflight Earth. The structure incorporated layered percussion patterns originally used to coordinate large groups before advanced communication technologies existed. Its purpose had never been entertainment. It had been unity. The playback authorization was granted. The first low-frequency pulse echoed through Helios 9's resonance chambers. Slow, deliberate, ancient. Something about the rhythm bypassed analytical hesitation entirely. Observers felt an instinctive awareness of shared timing, shared intention, shared movement potential. Across 9 species, individuals who evolved on entirely different worlds began anticipating one another's actions before verbal confirmation occurred. Synchronization achieved without instruction. One researcher summarized the phenomenon in a single sentence. The music does not command cooperation. It reminds us we are capable of it. The Concorde faced an unavoidable conclusion. Human music was not a destabilizing force. It was an amplifier of connection. Yet deploying it across active battlefields carried unpredictable consequences. Emotional reinforcement could inspire courage. It could also inspire sacrifice. Human representatives submitted their final proposal. A single transmission broadcast calibrated to propagate across Concorde communication arrays at harmonically stable frequencies. One composition. One unified signal. The Council hesitated only briefly before granting conditional approval. As the Virex Collective advanced toward the densely populated core systems, humanity prepared something the galaxy had not heard for centuries. A rhythm older than interstellar travel, older than diplomacy, older than fear of emotional influence. A sound once used to remind fragile beings facing impossible odds that they were not alone. The first war drum was about to be heard again. The transmission began as a vibration too low for most species to consciously perceive. Deep within the communication lattice of the galactic Concorde, harmonically calibrated signals moved along quantum relay channels, piggybacking on existing tactical data streams. The frequency did not interfere with communication protocols. It did not override command structures. It simply existed. At first, fleet commanders noticed only subtle irregularities in their sensory readouts. A faint resonance within ship hulls. A slight synchronization drift between independent navigation systems correcting toward shared timing intervals. Then the rhythm emerged clearly. Slow, measured, deliberate. A single percussive pulse repeated at precise intervals, optimized through human research to align with the widest possible range of biological and synthetic neural processing cycles. Across dozens of species, something ancient awakened, not memory of the sound itself, but recognition of pattern. The beat did not demand attention. It earned it. As the Concorde's combined fleets assembled defensive formations along the Persei corridor, the second harmonic layer entered the signal. Low-frequency tonal progressions provided structural continuity beneath the percussion, creating a stable auditory framework that reduced cognitive noise interference during high-pressure decision loops. Medical monitors began reporting unusual stability across crew populations. Stress hormone analogues decreased. Reaction latency tightened. Communication clarity improved despite rising battlefield complexity. When the Virex Collective emerged from subspace along the outer perimeter, they encountered a defense force unlike any they had previously analyzed. Ships from species that had once struggled to coordinate multi-vector maneuvers now adjusted formation spacing in seamless alignment. Weapon synchronization timing improved beyond predictive modeling accuracy thresholds. Course correction redundancies diminished as pilots instinctively anticipated one another's intentions. The Virex adapted immediately. Their vessels reconfigured attack geometries, adjusting vector convergence angles with machine precision. Gravitational shear pulses tore through the outer defensive layer, fracturing cruisers along structural seams. Losses occurred. Ships fell silent. Yet the formation did not collapse. The rhythm continued. Another percussive layer entered the transmission. Higher frequency strikes interwoven between the foundational pulses, increasing tempo without inducing cognitive overload. Human composers had designed the progression carefully, ensuring emotional escalation enhanced clarity rather than panic. Across the battlefield, something unprecedented occurred. Species that had historically relied exclusively on verbal command chains began executing protective maneuvers for Allied vessels before distress signals transmitted. A Ketheri destroyer altered course to intercept a gravitational fracture wave targeting a Thren carrier, sacrificing shield integrity to preserve formation continuity. A Valoran interceptor squad adjusted thrust vectors to reinforce a vulnerable Lethari support craft without awaiting command authorization. Trust emerged faster than protocol. The Virex attempted to exploit perceived emotional deviation patterns. They deployed recursive feint sequences calculated to induce hesitation. Yet hesitation did not occur. The rhythm maintained cognitive cohesion even under unpredictable attack geometries. Human tactical advisors observed the data streams with cautious optimism. Music did not eliminate fear. It contextualized it. Fear became information, not paralysis. The third movement of the composition activated as Concorde fleets initiated counteroffensive positioning. Layered harmonic structures introduced subtle tonal shifts historically associated with determination responses in human neurological studies. The effect translated across species with remarkable consistency. Pilots reported enhanced clarity when evaluating high-risk maneuvers. Commanders noted increased willingness among crews to maintain formation integrity despite unfavorable predictive models. Not reckless persistence, purposeful persistence. For the first time since the Virex incursion began, a coordinated strike penetrated their adaptive defense matrix. Concorde vessels executed a synchronized gravitational resonance cascade, a complex maneuver requiring near-perfect timing across hundreds of independent craft. The attack succeeded. 3 Virex nodes destabilized simultaneously, their flawless formation disrupted by timing deviations outside expected probability ranges. The collective attempted rapid recalibration, but their models contained no framework for predicting behavior influenced by emotional reinforcement structures. They adapted to logic. They struggled to adapt to unity. As the war drums intensified, the Concorde fleets advanced with unprecedented cohesion. Losses continued. War always demanded cost. Yet retreat calculations no longer defaulted to preservation priority when strategic opportunity presented viable resistance. Humanity's rhythm did not command sacrifice. It made sacrifice meaningful. and meaning proved resistant to predictive optimization. Across the battlefield, Virex vessels began adjusting patterns more aggressively, indicating recognition of anomalous resistance variables. They had encountered something their equations had not anticipated: a force multiplier not derived from technology, not derived from weapon yield, derived from connection. The war drums echoed across the stars, carried by quantum relays faster than fear could spread. For the first time since the invasion began, the Virex Collective encountered an adversary whose strength increased under pressure rather than diminished. And the rhythm was only beginning. By the time the fifth movement of the composition prepared for transmission, the battlefield had already changed in ways the Virex Collective struggled to quantify. Their predictive matrices adapted continuously, recalculating tactical solutions in microseconds. Yet the Concorde fleets no longer behaved within purely rational parameters. They did not ignore logic. They expanded beyond it. Ships held formation slightly longer than probability recommended. Pilots chose maneuvers balancing survival with preservation of others. Commanders began factoring something previously excluded from strategic models: shared purpose. The war drums continued pulsing through communication relays, maintaining cognitive alignment across vast distances. But humanity had not yet deployed the final composition. It had remained archived longer than any other piece, not banned by the Concorde, withheld by humans themselves. The composition was not written for war. It was written after it. Human history contained countless records of conflict, yet their most enduring works often emerged during reconstruction, when survivors faced the challenge of continuing despite loss. The final piece carried harmonic structures designed not to amplify aggression, but to sustain hope beyond exhaustion. Human representatives requested final authorization. The Council granted approval without debate. Across the Concorde's networks, the transmission began. Unlike the war drums, the opening tones were almost fragile. A single sustained harmonic resonance layered with distant melodic intervals rising slowly in frequency progression. The structure intentionally avoided urgency, instead creating cognitive space for emotional recalibration. Fleet medical monitors recorded immediate physiological responses. Stress indicators decreased. Neural overstimulation patterns stabilized. Species previously experiencing combat fatigue reported renewed focus without heightened aggression impulses. Then the secondary harmonic layer entered. Warm tonal progressions introduced mathematical ratios historically associated with resolution perception across multiple neurological architectures. Observers described the sensation not as victory, but possibility. On the battlefield, Concorde fleets continued coordinated maneuvers as the Virex attempted recalibration of adaptive strategies. Yet something unexpected occurred. Where previous movements strengthened resistance, the final composition strengthened restraint. Commanders declined unnecessary high-risk maneuvers once defensive advantage stabilized. Pilots prioritized preservation of damaged Allied vessels rather than maximizing offensive gain. The music did not erase the will to fight. It reminded them why survival mattered. Across multiple species, individuals described experiencing awareness beyond tactical outcome calculations. They were not merely preventing defeat. They were protecting a future. The Virex Collective encountered increasing difficulty predicting Concorde decision patterns. Traditional models assumed self-preservation optimization or expansion prioritization. The fleets now demonstrated cooperative preservation behaviors extending beyond logical reciprocity thresholds. They protected not only strategic assets, but each other. The final coordinated strike disabled the primary Virex synchronization node near the Persei corridor, fracturing their unified operational structure. Without flawless timing cohesion, their formations began experiencing micro-delays. Minor at first, then compounding. The collective withdrew remaining vessels beyond mapped space, prioritizing recalibration over continued engagement against increasingly unpredictable resistance variables. The silence that followed felt different from the one that had preceded invasion. Not empty. Peaceful. For the first time in centuries, the Concord lifted all restrictions on human harmonic structures. Music flowed freely across communication networks, shared not as weaponized influence, but as cultural exchange. Species began experimenting with collaborative compositions, blending tonal systems from worlds separated by thousands of light years. Unexpectedly, new diplomatic breakthroughs occurred not through negotiation, but through shared creative expression. Joint orchestral projects replaced traditional treaty ceremonies. Rhythmic synchronization exercises improved interspecies trust faster than political modeling predicted. Humanity did not claim victory credit. They simply shared archives previously kept private during the ban. Within those archives, researchers discovered something remarkable. Human war music represented only a small portion of their cultural output. Far more compositions focused on resilience, remembrance, exploration, and connection. The Concord updated humanity's classification status. No longer emotionally volatile. Now designated primary cultural stabilization species. Historians would later note the irony. The galaxy had feared human music because it influenced emotion. Yet emotion proved to be the missing component in purely logical systems attempting to preserve life. Technology protected civilization. Strategy guided it. But shared feelings sustained it. Long after the Virex retreated into unknown regions of space, a new tradition emerged among Concord fleets preparing for difficult missions. Before departure, crews gathered in quiet observation chambers. No speeches. No tactical briefings. Only sound. A simple rhythm reminding countless species that survival was rarely an individual achievement. And somewhere within the vastness of space, beyond sensors and equations, the echo of humanity's final composition continued carrying a truth older than interstellar travel. The strongest force in the universe was never silence. It was the heartbeat heard together.